Well, I think shifts in the competitive environment are changing business for everybody. So we have technology, we have heightened sensitivity to social issues, and these actually trigger changes for our clients, but for us too. So I think some of the basic concepts of consulting, like organization, we need to change that. So we've been doing much more work with ecosystem strategy, for example. Also on organization, thinking about not just people organizations, but synergistic combinations of people and algorithms. I think in terms of the analytics which support our projects, we've been using much larger data sets and machine learning. And then in terms of the social frictions and changes we're seeing around the world, Chile, Hong Kong, Brexit, and so on, doing much more work in terms of what can companies do to move beyond compliance to statesmanship and actually shaping the environment and being convincing on their social purpose and their social contribution. So just as for our clients, everything changes as a result of the uncertainties and disruptions, so it changes for us too. Well, I think the shifts that we're seeing are quite global in nature. So I think as with CEOs in other parts of the world, I think coping with uncertainty and disruption and these sort of heightened social sensitivities are absolutely critical. So for leaders, I think some of the new key skills are what I call extended leadership, which is leading not only the organization, the legal entity, but actually also leading and influencing and inspiring the broader ecosystem. I think in terms of managing under uncertainty, I think we need much more experimentation, much less optimization based upon existing knowledge, and much more sort of humbleness and curiosity and embracing experimentation and sometimes the failure that goes along with that. And then, of course, as demographics mature and with the heightened social values of the millennial generation, I also think they need to tune in to the talent, how to secure the talent that they need. So in the war for talent, I think there'll be also much more emphasis on being credible about the purpose of the corporation and the social contribution of the corporation, for example. So not fundamentally different from leadership skills, but with I think some important differences of nuance. Well, I think sometimes strategy is equated with planning, but planning is just one way of doing strategy. I think we also have experimenting. You can learn your way towards the future. I think we have envisioning, which is the idea of innovating to create the future. We have the idea of co-evolution and collaborating, which is building the future together in ecosystems. So I think there are many species of strategy, and we have to diversify our concepts of strategy. In fact, we probably need a different approach to strategy in each part of the organization. So a planning-based approach may be good in the relatively predictable cash cow, mature part of the organization, but it may not be good for the emerging, technology-driven, fast-changing aspects of the business. But in terms of the techniques to embrace uncertainty, I think essentially there are fundamentally not so many. And one of them is you could be better at forecasting. So for all of the noise, we can still forecast some things, but we need to be more sophisticated in our forecast. So for example, we might need to use larger data sets, or we might need to use more fresher data sets, or we might need to use machine learning to get to those forecasts. Or we can adapt. Essentially, we can adjust to uncertainty if we can adapt to the reality as it unfolds, but that takes tremendous agility. It means the ability to swap from one business model to another or to adjust resources fluidly. So that's quite hard for large corporations, but that becomes therefore a source of competitive advantage. Or we can hedge. If we have plausible possibilities of different scenarios, we can actually take two bets instead of one. Now that comes at a cost, but since the plan is probably going to be more often wrong than right in the environment we're in, I think companies need to get good at hedging, not just financially, but also operationally. The last thing I'd say is these are operational techniques, but also they imply a different way of thinking. So traditionally, if you if you analyze how companies talk about business, they tend to use a machine analogy. It's as if we're trying to optimize a machine that responds in very predictable ways. But actually, I think now we need to think more biologically. So it's more like the company is an organism that is not completely controllable and in a changing environment. So we need to think about, for instance, shaping and influencing rather than controlling. We need to think about a diversity of approaches and ways of thinking about things as opposed to the optimal way of thinking about things. And we probably need to think about learning rather than optimization and rules. And so that new way of thinking, I think, is also a challenge for the next generation of leadership.